Marketing Best Practices presented by HighRoad Solution. HighRoad Solution is an Avectra partner, and we look forward to their participation in the Avectra Users and Developers Conference next month. Presenting today is Ron McGrath, one of the original founders and now HighRoad Solution Chief Technology Officer. HighRoad Solution specializes in bringing integrative messaging solutions to the association nonprofit market. Ron has more than 18 years of experience developing and providing cutting-edge technology solutions to various markets, including associations and nonprofits. A serial entrepreneur and featured speaker at conferences across the country on email best practices, Ron is known to have a talent for making complex technologies accessible and compelling. I'll go ahead and turn things over to Ron so we can get started with today's program.
Thank you, Marla. Hi, my name is Ron McGrath. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at HighRoad Solution. Welcome to today's session on email marketing best practices in the future of email. We hope you find the content beneficial, and with that being said, let's get started. Thank you. Okay, so our objective, what we want to start with, is the fact that we want to get more members engaged in our email marketing communications. And so what we want to do is we're going to take you through the entire process from the starting point in terms of creating a message and things you want to think about in terms of what you want to include in the content, subject lines, testing, to getting that message delivered to the inbox of the recipient, and how that information will be absorbed by the member, and giving the member control over their email communications by implementing what we call an email preference center. And in the end, you want to be able to measure the effectiveness of these decisions that you've made in terms of leveraging the access you have to reporting metrics. So it's really an iterative process that you're constantly learning from, and it'll allow you to optimize the way that you're talking to your members to get better engagement. And so throughout that process, I'm going to cover here, we're going to talk about best practices, things that you want to think about. I'm going to be talking from a very high level. HighRoad Solution, that's our specialty, but I'm going to be referencing what's going on in general in the email space. I'll be talking about what some of our friends and colleagues and competitors do, and just in general what's going on in the email space. And so again, hopefully you'll be able to leverage this information. So let's start with what would be our benchmarks in terms of defining what success would be for us in terms of email marketing communications. And so MailChimp actually puts out a great study. It's a breakout of open rates, and it's broken out based on different vertical markets. And one of the things you have to think about as an association or nonprofit is your communications are a lot different than a retailer. And so what would necessarily be a good open rate for a retailer isn't necessarily a good open rate for an association. In the association nonprofit space, anything that's around 20% is a good open rate. Anything that's north of that means you're doing a lot of things correctly. And so one of the things that I want to show here is a lot of these client examples we'll give in terms of what other colleagues in your industry are doing are clients that we work with and that have done a lot of the things that we're going to be recommending on this call. And so one of our clients, ASAE, they experience around a 33% open rate on average over their email communications. There's a lot of things I think that they're doing that other organizations can learn from. One is they do have full integration to their AMS. Also, they have implemented a really robust email preference center. And then you can see within their newsletter, one of the things that I really like they do is they provide a table of contents at the top, a talk. And why that's important is when you send out an email, different topics are going to resonate with different people. And so by giving a talk at the top, you allow each individual recipient to find what means most to them and drill into that content further. And so table of contents are always effective in that way. Another one of our clients, meeting planners, they do some great things with their email marketing communications. What I like is their newsletter is not a very vertical newsletter. They've worked hard to make sure it's pretty terse in terms of the content. You don't have to scroll very far to get to all of it. And what you see as a byproduct of that is the fact that they get significantly click-through rates throughout the entire message, and that's not typical. Typically what you'll see is click-throughs at the top, and quickly it'll go down to 0%. Because their email isn't very vertical, you'll notice they get click-throughs throughout the email communication. The other thing you'll notice, too, is they make effective use of images, and you'll notice that they put play buttons behind anything that will drive a recipient to a video, more likely getting them to click on it. And so things that you can take advantage of in your email marketing communications. So are open rates the end-all, be-all? What could be more important than open rates? Well, what's more important than open rates is the purpose of the email. Every email has a call to action. If you're building a message to send out to your membership and it doesn't have a call to action, you shouldn't be sending it. So in the end, it's great to have great open rates, but in the end, it's really about, did they do what you're trying to get them to do? Did they convert? And so conversions could be us marketing this webinar and people registering for the event. You know, how many people opened the message and went back and registered for the event? Same thing for association if you're doing a lot of event marketing. You know, are people actually registering for the events? You know, how much revenue are you generating from those event registrations? Also, again, you could be sending out email communications encouraging a member to renew their membership by showing them and highlighting the benefits they've received this year from their membership. And so are they actually renewing their membership? So it's very important that when you're leveraging an email marketing platform that they have some form of conversion tracker. And so various systems have this, and you'd want to explore that. But being able to measure all the way to conversion is a very important measurement or metric to have. So how do you get to this point where you're getting these kinds of open rates and conversions? The first tenet, the foundation, kind of the linchpin, is you need to have integration to your AMS. In this case, if you're running that forum, you want to make sure that you have integration between your AMS, NetForum, and your email marketing platform. Why that's important is because you want to be able to send out these targeted emails, and it's very important that data is moving effectively in an automated fashion between the two different platforms. So that's going to allow you to send out much more targeted emails because you're going to have a ton of segmentation coming over from NetForum via Query Central or the committees module or the events module. Also, when the email platform basically determines an email address is bad, that it's past a certain threshold in terms of bounces, that's information you need to know back in NetForum. Also, if a recipient, a member receives an email and they want to change their preferences, that's something, again, that should live inside of NetForum. And so having integration in place is kind of the foundation of setting forth on a path of having an effective email marketing strategy. Now, here at HighRoad, we offer a very, very robust integration. I think what's unique about us is the fact that we've built our integration completely in-house, and so if you need customizations, like your email preference center should be unique based on if the person's a member or not a member, or officers shouldn't be able to opt out of certain types of communications because they've agreed in the bylaws that they would receive those messages. Those are things that we can customize. If you have questions about that, we're going to have contact information at the end, and you can reach out to us. In terms of building out the message, the first thing you want to think about is when you're building an email communication, you really do have a small bit of screen real estate to make the most of. It's what we call the area above the fold, and it's how much of the email the recipient will see before they scroll. Okay? This is where your call to action needs to appear. If it's not there, you're less likely to get the recipient to engage. The other thing you want to think about is not only how is your email rendering on desktops, but also how does it render on mobile devices, because more and more people are opening emails over mobile devices. Based on Gartner Group studies, within the next 2 years, people will read more email over their mobile devices than their desktops. And so you'll see later on in the presentation that time is really upon us now. There's a lot of metrics out there, including from our client base of over 400 clients, that shows that people are already reading a lot of their emails over their mobile devices. So when you're building out a message, you definitely want to make the most of that screen real estate above the fold. The other thing to think about is how does your message render in the recipient's receiving device. So when I say render, what I mean by that is when you're building out a message, it's really just HTML. And the receiving device has to interpret that HTML and then display it in a visual way. And so that's what web browsers do. That's what email clients do. The difference between web browsers and email clients is web browsers have a lot more standards than email clients. They're not completely compliant across the board, but there's a standards committee that has put together some standards in terms of what is compliant HTML for web browsers, and those providers like Firefox or IE have tried to implement those, even though Microsoft kind of goes out of bounds sometimes. Email clients don't have those same standards. And so when you're building out a message, the goal is to get the most consistent rendering across the largest number of email clients, so your email looks the way you intended it to. Okay, so this is a tool that we use here at HighRoad, a tool that you can have direct access to. It's a company called Litmus. They're not an email marketing provider. They basically make these great rendering tools. And it allows you to actually test your emails before you send them out and see how they're going to look in some of the top email clients out there. So when you're using the tool, you'll basically send yourself a test message, and it'll generate within seconds 35 different copies of how this email looks in this email client, this web-based email client, this mobile device, for example, an iPad or iPhone. What's nice about that, too, is it allows you to scroll. We're going to have links in this presentation to all these resources, and this is something that we'll provide after the actual webinar, but really a great tool that you want to take advantage of. The other thing that's nice is the founder of Litmus, Paul Farnell, he actually put together a video clip. It's about 4 or 5 minutes, and it really breaks down and explains in layman's terms how email clients interpret HTML and why there are some inconsistencies there. And so I highly recommend you take some time and listen to that, especially if you're experiencing rendering issues with your messages. So the other thing that we started to talk about is rendering in terms of mobile devices and the fact that you need to start thinking about that now. This is some current, data that was comprised last year around June from Campaign Monitor, and basically is based on several million emails that they send out on a monthly basis. And it's basically a look at what are the receiving software or devices the emails are getting opened on. And you can see at the top, the one that got the most was Outlook, and that's typical in terms of most emails are actually read over Outlook. What was actually surprising was the second most used software or device wasn't another email client like a web-based one like Hotmail or Gmail. It was actually iOS devices. And that shows you that a lot of people are already reading their emails over mobile devices. Now, what's happening is they're accessing it from both. So they're still accessing it from their desktop, but when people are on the run, they'll also read those emails on their mobile devices. So again, more data that shows you really need to start thinking about mobile-friendly versions of your email. And this is kind of another way of looking at that data. It's broken out by desktop, web, which would be a web-based email client like Hotmail, or mobile. You'll notice that desktop and web are still at the top, but they're coming down, whereas mobile devices it's going up dramatically. And so again, most platforms, we have a mobile-friendly version. We'll have that kind of functionality, and you're going to want to start to take the extra time to design an HTML version that's going to render better on mobile devices. And I'll show you some things that you want to think about when you're doing that. So this would be a newsletter that you're building out. It's, again, HTML. And you're going to send this out, and it's going to have your topics in it, some advertising on the sidebar. And, again, behind the scenes, it's just plain HTML. Now, most email platforms, they will also allow you to send a text version of the message just in case the receiving device can't view HTML. Again, the movement in the spaces, most mobile devices can show HTML. The issue now is the screen is smaller. And so what you want to think about is really a second version of your HTML. It's kind of like a mobile-friendly website. Basically, it's still HTML, but you're going to be more selective with your imagery. You have shorter articles. And so what we do, for example, within our platform is the receiving device, there'll be a link at the top that allows the recipient to toggle between the mobile version and the full version. And that's important, again, because someone might be accessing the same email from both devices, and you want to give them the ability to toggle back and forth. So again, the drawback is you do have to create a second version of your newsletter that you're sending out. But the benefits of it are the fact that you're going to probably get more people engaged over their mobile device. This is another nice look of a newsletter or a communication that was built out to render properly on a mobile device. You'll notice that there's some imagery at the top, but the rest are articles. They're short, they're brief, there's read more links, and that's kind of an effective way to go about doing that. So now that we're talking about content and how to build out a message and make the most of the space above the fold and thinking about what kind of devices the messages are opened on, another thing that you can leverage in a lot of email platforms is something that we call dynamic content in the industry. And it's basically saying, I know something about my audience. I know the fact that, you know, they belong to a particular demographics because that's coming over from that forum. Or I know something about my audience based on what they've done in the past in terms of what they've opened or what they've clicked on. And so, for example, let's say you're sending out a newsletter. It's a newsletter about technology, and based on what people have opened in the past, you've divvied up that your membership based on people that have expressed interest in things strategic in technology, social, or leadership-wise. So wouldn't it be nice to leverage that information or insight you have about your audience? And dynamic content allows you to do that. And so basically, most platforms, what they do is they have some kind of way of inputting a tag where you would want this content to change. And then when you send out the newsletter, you'll see that, for example, you're sending one newsletter to all 3 lists. People that have expressed an interest in leadership issues, well, they get a lead story more relevant to what they're interested in. They get this heading, this actual description, this link, this picture. Whereas someone who has basically expressed interest in social media, well, they get a lead story more relevant to what they're interested in. So dynamic content is an effective way of making the most of some insight you have about your audience to make the most of the space above the fold. And so if you're not doing this kind of thing, these are things that are going to be really beneficial to you, and so something that I would encourage you to start to test. So now that you've built out the message and you've sent out the message, what you want to think about is when that message comes in to the recipient's inbox, there's a specific way that emails are consumed. Okay? It's something that happens on a subconscious level, but basically the first thing that the recipient will see is the sender name, and I'll talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts of that. But that's kind of your from address, your sender name is part of your branding. Okay, if they don't recognize it, if you ever get an email you don't recognize, you normally don't open that or read it. So sender name is very important. Subject line, you know, having an engaging subject line, you know, is it better to have a more exciting, salesy type subject line, or is it more important to be straight to the point? We'll talk a little bit about that. But subject line is also the next thing that they kind of look at. Preview pane. A lot of email clients are defaulting, for example, Outlook, to having preview panes open. So they'll see part of the message there, and so that part that they see you want to make sure is engaging. Again, then the space above the fold, and then hopefully if you still have them engaged, they'll go through the entire email and they'll click through. So kind of thinking about the way the email is consumed and knowing that, leveraging that information. So when you're building out a promotional email, there's certain pieces to the message. Again, you have the sender name, the subject line. You have something that we refer to as the pre-header. And let me show you a little bit more about what pre-headers are. Basically, the pre-header in a message is the little blurb that it's really the first piece of content in the message that will show up. And so normally what is recommended in the industry for pre-headers are having things like, if you're having a problem viewing this email, click here to view an online version. Or, you know, please add our from address to your address book so that it's in the address book and it ensures the message gets to the inbox. And also, like, for example, if they had image blocking on, it'll automatically load images if you're in the recipient's address book. And those are still good things to do. However, you want to think a little bit beyond that because of this whole mobile part of the equation. For example, on an iPhone, that pre-header shows up also. So iPhones have this ability to have a preview, and it's kind of like a preview in Outlook. However, on an iPhone, it actually shows you part of this pre-header. So if you have your typical pre-header, that's great, but maybe you might want to put something a little bit more like offer, a compelling offer in the pre-header. And so these are things that can be very, very helpful and things you want to think about, especially since a lot more people are opening these emails over mobile devices. Basically, a newsletter has the same kind of components. And again, just kind of looking at different pieces you want to have in there. Obviously, you want to have some branding. Again, the table of contents is very important. I'll talk about secondary content or secondary branding. And then social sharing also, I'll talk about why that's important. So some general guidelines that you want to think about when you're building out these emails is, based on studies, the top left corner is the most important real estate of an email. The other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you're making effective use of what we call the 60-40 rule. Even though you're sending out very rich-looking messages, which is a good thing, you don't want to go crazy with the images because, again, a lot of recipients have image blocking on. And so, for example, I get an email from TGI Fridays every Friday. I don't really know what the offers are because it's complete images, and so I have image blocking on. So even when you're using images, you do want to make sure that 60% of that rich-looking message is still text or copy. Okay. The other thing is making sure, again, you always have a main call to action in your email communication and having a table of contents hopefully above the fold. Effective use of read more links is very important because they're going to allow you to have more terse articles, which means you're going to be able to get more content above the fold. But even more important than that, it's going to allow you to zero in on what topics are resonating most with your audience. And so having those read more links is important. Don't just give away your content for free. Make your member work a little bit more for getting the entire article. And again, like I said before, the theme here is to start thinking about mobile versions of your email. From a design perspective, best practices, you do want to design your messages based on 600 pixels in width, okay? We talked a little bit about the vertical scroll and limiting that as much as you can. But nothing's worse than requiring someone to scroll horizontally to see what's going on within your email communication, right? So you do want to design it based on someone that would have maybe the lowest resolution set on their monitor, so 600 pixels in width. Again, getting your call to action above the fold, which is around 420 pixels, and then thinking about, again, how much content's going to show up in preview panes because a lot of people are using that. And really an important concept is remember, white space is a design element, and so you want to make effective use of white space. Sometimes, again, less is more. From an email coding best practices, things you want to think about are, if you must use CSS, please use inline CSS, right? I would recommend staying away from CSS if you can because, again, CSS does not work consistently across all email clients in the same manner. So you're not going to necessarily get the most consistent rendering across devices. But if you are going to use CSS, use it inline. It's better to use basic font tags with HTML tables for layouts. That's going to give you much more effective rendering consistency. Also, don't use any active content in your emails. Scripting or forms, those are things that spam filters are going to pick up. And so you don't want to do that. They're going to get stripped out anyways, and it's actually going to impact your deliverability. Make sure you're using the alt tags in your HTML. What an alt tag is when you put an image in, it has an attribute called ALT, and you can put some text there. So if the image is blocked, it'll at least show that text, and so you want to use that effectively. Remember that Outlook 2007 ignores those, but definitely still want to use that. And then when you're copying content from Word into your HTML editor or whatever tool you're using, be careful with that because a lot of times it brings over proprietary HTML that causes deliverability issues, rendering issues, formatting issues. So it's better to go from it to Notepad into the actual HTML editor. In our editor, we do have an auto sense tool that will strip that out in it, but just something you want to be careful with. Now, if you must use CSS, there is a cheat sheet out there. There's a link to this that shows you kind of each one of the CSS elements and which email clients they work in. And so, again, it's a great cheat sheet. We make one. Campaign Monitor makes one. And so we've got some links in here for you to take a look at that. And then the other thing that we started to talk about is that you want to think about your sender from name. Now, the sender from name, you can see down here, is the actual from name or the alias that sits on top of the from address. Okay, it's very important that you're choosing sender from names that are consistent, that are part of your brand, that are going to be things that the recipient recognizes, because again, it truly is part of your brand. So I'll show you a couple examples here. On the left is bad, on the right is good. On the left, you can see these from names, they look spammy, right? On the right, you can see these from names, they are what they are. You recognize the brand right away, and if it's something you're interested in, you're going to click into the message further. Based on return path, 56% cited knowing and trusting the sender as a reason to open. 73% clicked on report spam based on the from line. So these are things to think about in terms of your choice of sender from name. Subject lines. This is a big conversation because everyone's kind of trying to find what is the optimum subject line to use for our audience. And, it's just some universals. You definitely want to make it engaging and benefit-oriented. You want to make it unique to each issue. You want to put the most important information first. Obviously, try to stay away from subject lines that sound spammy, and then make sure you match it to your content and your audience. And then, don't just focus on opens, but focus on conversions. And so, it's interesting because MailChimp put together this cool tool that allows you to analyze different subject lines and how they've performed. And based on this study that they conducted, they kind of isolated what subject lines were the most effective. And what they found was the more boring, or the subject lines you would think were more boring, actually outperformed the more pitchy, salesy type subject lines. What's great for an association nonprofit is you'll notice on the left, a lot of them have the word newsletter in it. Right? So you guys send out a lot of newsletters. A retailer typically sends out promotional pieces. What they should be doing is sending out newsletters to keep that relationship going, because they're going to be more effective with that. And so you can see basically the theme here, it's not complicated. Subject lines are simple. They should describe the subject of your email. It's that simple. Something that's more direct to the point is going to outperform anything that's salesy, pitchy, so forth and so on. And so something you want to think about with subject lines. The more important thing is, don't take my word for it. Don't take Marketing Sherpa. There's tons of studies out there that have great data in terms of, what's going on, what's most effective. But, there's nothing better than testing against your own audience. And that's what you want to do, because your audience is unique to you. And so the best thing to do is to find out is, send out emails, change those subject lines, see how it's affecting your open rates and click-throughs, and then start to modify what you're doing. So you definitely want to use a platform that has some form of what we call A/B testing. Now, what is A/B testing going to do for you? It's going to make it easier to actually perform these tests and make sure and ensure you're testing what you intended to. So an A/B test would be, okay, I'm sending an email out to 20,000 people. I want to take out a random sampling of 2,000 before I send it out and break it up into two lists. That platform should automatically do that for you. Randomize it, create the two test lists of 1,000. When you send out the email, you want to be able to compare these back to back to each other and look at the metrics and decide which one outperformed. And so for you, it might be opens. For another client, it might be conversions. So that's what A/B testing is going to allow you to do. It's going to randomize. It's going to create the test list. And in the reporting side, it's going to allow you to quickly compare them back to back. Kind of another look at this of an A/B test is, again, trying to look at version A versus version B. And these versions might be different creative, different subject lines, different times, different days of the week. And again, you can isolate systematically what works most with your audience. And so testing is very, very important. A thing that comes up a lot is video. And, I find that our clients and other people that are sending out emails, they want to find ways to embed video inside emails. Well, I'll tell you that time is starting to come upon us. You could already, with Hotmail, embed YouTube clips and actually play it within the body of the message. The latest thing that has happened is Hotmail is actually HTML5 compliant now. So that means you can use HTML5 to embed video directly embedded inside the email, and it will play within the email client. And so if you want to test, does that affect engagement in terms of click-throughs, you could actually basically segment out all the Hotmail addresses you have, send them out an embedded video clip, and compare that to how the rest of the audience performed on a picture of a video clip. And so these are things you can do right now. It's pretty cool in terms of how it works. In the presentation, I'm going to include some instructions on how to basically embed kind of a player controller within that so the person can control the video within the email. And again, just something that you can start playing with now. The other thing that you have to think about if you're doing email marketing is CANISPAM compliance. You have to make sure that every email that you send out is always compliant. And so most platforms will do that through some kind of footer that they append to an email. So this is what a footer would look like. It's going to have a physical address, and it's going to give the recipient the ability to opt out of future email communications. Now, basically, when I say opt-out, I mean it in the legal sense of the word. Globally opt-out, so that they quickly can say, look, I don't want email marketing from your organization. And it just has to be across the board. What we always recommend is going beyond compliance and having a full-blown email preference center. So yes, at the bottom, can they globally opt out? They can. But more importantly, at the top, they can just be more specific about the types of emails they want to receive from you. So again, you don't want people globally opting out. You really want them to stay in your email marketing database, but you do want to know what they prefer to receive from you. So basically, opt-out is about compliance. Email preferences are about engagement. And so having a full-blown, robust email preference center is very important. ERA is one of our clients. Their preference center is integrated with NetForum, does some very, very cool things in terms of if the person comes here, it turns into an opt-in page and allows them to opt in to receiving emails, and we dynamically create a org and individual within NetForum, link them together, and we send a notification to ERA that someone opted in to receive emails from them. So interesting things you can do through integration. Email preference center for MOA, I love what they've done with theirs. We've developed this in terms of kind of the layout. I like the way that theirs is simple. It's broken out by their newsletters. They have samples also, which I find is very, very effective. Just to give you a feel, MOA sends out about 2 million emails a month. They get around 42 to 45% open rates. So again, your engagement is not going to be based just on volume. It's really going to be based on, are you segmenting? Are you targeted? Have you implemented an email preference center? Are you doing all the things that we're recommending here? One of the things that I really like is they do a great job of what we call primary and secondary branding. So every email that leaves their organization always has the MOA brand on it. The secondary branding is the type of communication it is. So this is a legislative update. Why that's important is if I go to the email preference center, I can quickly correlate this email I received to the actual option on the preference center. So it allows me to kind of, in my mind, mentally bucketize the types of emails that MOA sends out and then pick and choose what I want from them. ASAE is another one of our clients. Their challenge is the fact that they do send out a lot of email communications, and so they had to have more options on their preference center. What's interesting there is there's basically what we do is we check if the person's a member or not, and so members can get these communications, including the section newsletters, which are member benefits, and non-members can't see those pieces. So again, making that preference center dynamic based on data that we're pulling back from the AMS. I always recommend, if someone does a global opt-out, you show them a little extra message that lets them know what this truly entails, just letting them know that you're about to remove yourself from email marketing messages from us. Now, if someone opts out of email marketing, you have to stop sending them email marketing messages, but you still can send them transactional. What is a transactional email? It's an email where I've gone to your website, I bought something, I renewed my membership, I registered for the event, you sent me a confirmation message, okay? Transactional emails don't have to look plain. You can use HTML for them. We have some really robust things that we have in our platform for transactional. What I encourage you to do is in every transactional email you send out, make sure you give that recipient the ability to update or opt back in to receiving your email marketing messages, right? Because you can't email market to them now, but you can send them transactional. So in that message, give them the ability to opt back in to receiving your emails, and something you can take advantage of. The other thing that you want to think about as an organization is, not only do you send the right message to the right person, but do you send the right message to the right person at the right time? And that's what lifecycle messaging is all about. It's a fancy term that they use in the industry, and it's about understanding your customer lifecycle, and within that lifecycle, communicating with them at key milestones within that lifecycle. So for a member-driven organization, that might be a member signs up. Well, when they sign up, you might not want to send them one big email. You might want to send them 4 emails over 4 weeks that tells them about the benefits of membership, right? Or another critical part of the life cycle is just before their membership is about to expire. You might want to, again, tell them about the benefits they've received by being a member of their organization and remind them to renew their membership. So, again, these are things that can be automated, things that if you're leveraging effectively lifecycle messaging, can help you in terms of membership renewals and event registrations. The other thing that is a lot of excitement in the email space is social. And so I want to talk briefly about the different things in terms of how email and social intersect. First of all, email and social are not competitors. Social is not going to displace email. The thing is they're complementers and they work together. So if you've initiated or launched a new social platform, you got to find ways to get people there. And the best way to do that is email. So they work in tandem. So that's one thing, is using email to drive members to your new social platforms to get them engaged. The other way that social and email intersect is the fact that within your emails, you should be adding more social share capabilities so that people that receive your emails can share that content through their social platforms with their friends and family, and I'll show you how to do that. And then using social to enhance your email metrics. One of the things that we do is we don't just capture opens and clicks and so forth. We capture what's going on within the social platforms, and so you can also use that for segmentation. So there's really 3 ways that you can leverage social. So again, using it to drive members to your social platforms, maybe to complete profiles or to join communities or register for events. Again, this is where measuring conversions will be helpful. You know, not only did they open the email, but did they go back and complete their profile? And so another way that you can leverage conversions. Social share. Within your emails themselves, giving the recipient the ability to easily share their content through their social platforms. We have a feature called Social Share. Other email marketers have other variations of this. Basically, from a high level, the way it looks is you can add these little social share icons to your email, and you can put a link behind them. It's called a social share link. And what our platform does on the back end is it does all this automation. And now what happens is when a recipient receives this email, they can click on one of these icons, and it'll give them a little widget like this, and it'll allow them to choose from several dozen social platforms. So let's say they choose Facebook. What it'll do is it'll check, are they logged into Facebook? If not, it'll ask them to log in. If they're logged in, it'll just give them this little piece that allows them to see what they're about to post on their Facebook. This is a picture that you put in the message when you're building it out, and kind of a little blurb. And next thing you know, when they hit post, it adds that to their social, to their wall, and now all their friends can see it. So it's really effective. It also puts a link to an email, to the actual email that you sent out, and it just makes it easy for your members to share your content through their social platforms. So to finish up the presentation, just a couple little things I want to talk about in terms of the future of email. Traditionally with email or email clients, especially web-based email clients like Gmail and Hotmail, they've really restricted what you can do within the email message, right? For security reasons. They basically don't want people spreading viruses and things like that. They're going to start to open that up. You're seeing that's happening with HTML5, with the ability to embed video within Hotmail. And they're going to open that up more and more because they're losing eyeballs to other platforms like Facebook. And so one of the things that you're going to see in the future is right now emails are very static. So if you sent out an email today, or let's say Amazon sent out an email and they had a promotion on a particular type of book, that promotion basically is stale as tomorrow. You know, when tomorrow comes, it's no longer valid because the actual content itself isn't coming from the server. It's just you send out the email and then that's static content. You're going to start to see it actually become dynamic content where when someone opens up an email, it's talking to a web server and pulling back more relevant, timely information. So we could open up that email a month later and it'll show the latest discounts that we could experience if we were to actually take part in the actual offering that they've provided. So these are changes that you're going to see in email over time. And so again, just things in terms of things to look out for, but a lot of things that you can do today to be more effective with your email marketing communication. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up to questions, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ron. As Ron indicated, we are now ready for our question and answer segment. And your participation is key to the success of this webinar, so please don't hesitate to ask questions. And to enter questions through the web conference system, simply type your question into the open box at the bottom of the Q&A window on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. One question, Ron, that came in is, what is the most unique integration that you have done with NetForum?
Oh, that's interesting. That's a good question. Well, we've done quite a few. We found that a lot of customizations happen on the email preference centers. in the fact that what will happen is, for example, an organization might want to, for example, show the preferences on the page, but if the person is a non-member, gray out what would be considered member benefits and show them what they're missing out on, and have a link to actually go to the member portal to be able to become a member to get those communications. So that's something that that we've done for several clients. And then also how we pull back data. One of the things that's happening now is we've noticed that more and more clients want to do transactional through our platform. And so we're doing that through some special web services where we're pulling back and sending out that stuff on a daily basis for them.
Okay, great. Do you have recommendations that you could provide for helping increase email recipient engagement?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you want to do is make sure you have a full-blown email preference center, because what better way to know what people want than to let them tell you. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you can do, is implement one of those and then use that information effectively.
Okay, great. And I'll give a few more minutes for folks to enter in any other questions. In the meantime, I do want to mention when the session concludes today, you will be seeing an exit survey in the screen, and we'd like to make sure that you take a moment to complete the exit survey and give us your feedback on this program. Your comments and suggestions are important to us and help us provide you with quality and informative webinars. I mentioned CAE credit earlier, and for those requiring a certificate for CAE credit, all attendees will be sent the certificate via email by close of business tomorrow. Certificates are the responsibility of each attendee to submit to the accrediting body in your area for approval. So I'm looking to see if we have any additional questions. And I think some questions are coming in, so I'll give those a few more minutes and have people continue to go through the exit survey.
Okay.
I know we have waiting for another question, so just bear with us. And I see Amy has a question. I don't know, Amy, if you can go ahead and put that into the Q&A panel. Just type your question into the box at the bottom of the panel and hit the little sort of quote window to send me your question. I'm glad to see it looks like folks are filling out the exit survey, so I appreciate that.
And Marla, I do see a few new questions coming in there in the Q&A pod for you.
Okay, I'm not seeing those. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. Let's see. Just bear with me a moment. One of the questions was about best practices to email market to anyone who hasn't engaged through opens or click-throughs in the last 6 months. Would you recommend a more aggressive approach in certain circumstances?
You know, that's a great question. You know, typically when people haven't, I always recommend keeping an eye on that in terms of who's opening. If people aren't opening over a certain amount of time, you might want to stop sending them the types of emails you're sending out. But I think one thing you can do is maybe just reach out to them if you have a list like that and say, you know, we've noticed that you haven't engaged in the, because they're members, and again, this is part of the member benefits, and let them know, look, you've noticed that they haven't engaged. You want to be careful about how much information you disclose, because they don't want to feel like it's Big Brother, but really driving them to the email. We'd like to know more about the types of emails you'd like to receive from our organization, and driving them to your email preference center for them to kind of engage in it and tell you a little bit more about what they want to receive. So that's one strategy, but you definitely want to be careful about in terms of looking at who's opening the message, and if someone hasn't opened it over a certain period of time, maybe kind of doing a last effort in terms of initiating this email campaign, and then after that really kind of leaving them off your email sending list for a while.
Okay. Another question was, are you providing us with information on how to track where someone clicks on the email?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's something that's in our reporting. We offer a visual click-through report that shows you where people are clicking on with clicking within the message in a very visual way.
Do you have workflow capabilities for creating, reviewing, and executing the emails?
We do. We have an approval process in our product that allows to have a team of people that design the content and another team of people that approve it. It's a great way of making sure that you're delegating sending responsibility, but you're still maintaining control over your brand through a centralized department. And so, yeah, we definitely have that.
Okay. Do you have newsletter templates?
Yeah, we do. We have quite a few templates that we provide for free, and then we also have the ability, we have a design department that can create custom templates for you. So that's something that, and then they test those templates, make sure that they render well across a large number of email clients.
Okay, great. Another question we got is, how is the data pulled from NetForum?
Well, what we do is basically, everything that we do is through XWeb. So you would have to have a valid XWeb license with Avectra. Once we have the XWeb license, we basically have built the integration ourselves. So we can hook into NetForum in different ways. So what we'll do is we do a kickoff call for our client, which is great because any client that has an integration gets this kickoff call. It's something we have to be able to implement the integration, but it's actually a great service because what we start with asking is, what are your email marketing requirements? How do you segment? What are the email preferences you want to expose on your email preference center? And this is an exercise that we do, and we walk you through it. It's actually part of the integration. And so by the time it's done, not only do you have a really robust integration, but you have a kind of an email marketing strategy in place. So, yeah, we can hook into the different modules. For example, a lot of times a client might do a lot of event marketing, so we'll hook directly into that. Or, we'll come through Query Central. And in certain cases, we might do customizations where there's a huge amount of data, so we'll come through execute methods. So we have a lot of experience there, and what we'll do is we'll do the kickoff call and then recommend what's the best way to hook into it. But it's all through XWeb, and again, if we need to customize our baseline, we can do that in-house ourselves for you.
Okay, great. Another question that came in was, how does an integration with NetForum help email list hygiene?
Oh, great question. So one of the important things is with us, and I can't speak for other organizations, but with us, with our integration, it's very, very robust. We understand NetForum and the data model very well. And so there is a flag in NetForum called EML_invalid_flag. And so when our system finds an email address to be bad, we mark that flag, okay? And what that means is now you know that back in NetForum. So there's two things. You can run a report in Query Central that gives you everyone that you have a bad email address for, and maybe you want to have a call campaign to get updated email addresses. But also what we would recommend is putting a tooltip on top of that flag on the CRM record. What that's going to do is when member services is on the phone and brings up their CRM record, it's going to show that this is a bad address. And while you're on the phone with that member, why don't you try to get an updated email address? So by marking that back in NetForum, you can use that data in an effective way.
Okay, great. Another question that came in is, how does integrating social media campaigns impact engagement?
That's another great question. We don't really know yet. There's not a lot of metrics in terms of what it's doing in terms of engagement. I will tell you that it makes it easier for members to share their content, but there's just not a lot of definitive data out there at this point in terms of how much impact that's having in terms of engagement within email. So we'll see, but it's definitely a good thing to be doing, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit more concrete data of whether it helps or not.
Okay. Let me just go through. I want to make sure I got everything. Okay, here's another question. Would you ever recommend to create one HTML template that is a hybrid of regular/mobile version HTML? So design only needs to create one version if resources are limited?
You're better off if you can have really two HTML versions, but if you do have limitations, then you can really kind of do things that are going to render properly on both devices. The thing you won't be able to get around is you're just going to have a happy medium, because on the desktop, you'd want to have a little bit more imagery than you would want to have on a mobile device. So you'd have to kind of strike a good balance in the middle. But definitely using HTML tags that are going to work properly on both devices. It's funny, but mobile devices actually render HTML, the constructs within them, the tags, better than desktops, because mobile devices actually have more standards. Like iPhones have been doing HTML5 for a while. So that's the interesting thing. Yep.
Okay. Another question we received is, how would you drive people to tell you about their email preferences?
I think being direct is the best thing to do. So first of all, a couple things I would do is, if you've never had an email preference center and you've just implemented one, and we do that a lot with our clients, when we turn up a new client and we integrate them, it's normally the first time they've used an email preference center. So in that case, it'd be as simple as just sending out an email to your membership and just letting them know you want to find more effective ways to communicate with them, and if they would take a moment to tell you more about the types of communications they want to receive. So that's the first thing I would do. The other thing is making sure that on your website, that on every page, or at least on the main page, they have the ability to quickly get to that preference center. Because sometimes, someone might be on your site or opt in to receive emails directly from your website. You want to make that very easy to do. And then obviously every email itself, within the footer, you always have something encouraging them to update their preferences too.
Okay, great. It looks like there was a follow-up question to the question about integrating with NetForum. The question is asked, we conduct webinars twice a month and would like to consider using another service. Does XWeb have a cost, or is it a free service? I can at least answer on the NetForum side. Is for both of our products, there is a license fee for XWeb. So the person who asked that, I can contact you offline to give you some more information about that. I don't know on your side if you want to speak to that, Ron.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as what you said. There is definitely, they have to have a valid XWeb license, which there is a small cost, a license cost on your side, and then once they have that, basically, I think this was not necessarily on email, but on the webinar, we do have an integration between our webinar product we're using today and NetForum too. So basically, when someone signs in, they use their eWeb login. They don't use a special login. They use their same eWeb login to connect into the meeting. And then when someone connects into the meeting, we mark it in NetForum that they actually attended the meeting. So a great integration we have there. But yes, you definitely have to have a valid license.
Okay, great. Another question just came in. Have you integrated spam feedback from email service providers such as Yahoo?
Yes, yep. That's one of the good things about going with a big provider such as ourselves, is we're going to have those things in place like feedback loops. And we actually have, at this point, 17 feedback loops set up with different providers, Hotmail, Gmail. So basically what a feedback loop is for the whole audience is when you send an email out, you hope people just, at the very, very worst, opt out. But sometimes that doesn't happen. People just click on report as spam. That's a problem, because if too many people do that, it's like a vote. And if you go past a certain threshold, well, that actually can get you blacklisted by that ISP. So we have feedback loops set up with the major ISP so that when someone clicks on report as spam, it's actually connected to our system, and we actually opt them out of your email database. So it protects your email reputation.
Okay, another interesting question came in. Is there a tipping point to what percentage of your email audience are opening on a mobile device before taking the extra effort to always offer an email mobile version?
Yeah, that's a great question. The number itself I couldn't really speak for per se, but I do think to the question, it's very important to measure, for your audience. Again, I'm showing you market trends, but for your audience, how many people are actually reading it from a mobile device? So obviously the platform itself, our platform can do this. It has to be able to show you what kind of device they're reading it on. Because again, creating the secondary HTML version for mobile devices, there's time, energy, and resources that involve with that. So it needs to make sense. Now, what that number is really is going to depend on what you think. But measuring it before, you don't want to just go ahead and create a HTML version for mobile without knowing anything about your audience and what they're opening it on.
Okay, I know we're nearing the end of our time. One other question was about whether or not you're going to be at our user and developer conference next month, and are you going to be doing a session there?
We are. We're actually going to be there, and we are going to be doing a session. Jenny, who are we going to be doing the session with?
NFIB?
Okay, yep. We're going to be doing a session with NFIB. With NFIB, they're on NetForum. We've been working with them for a while. They have integration between NetForum, our email platform, our webinar tool, and our fax platform. So we're going to talk about that as a whole. Their email integration is really, really robust. We're syncing over data. We have lifecycle messaging that's automated. We have a full-blown email preference center. We write reporting back to NetForum, tons of things. So we're going to be covering that in a lot of detail.
Okay, great. I got a few more questions, so I think we have a few more minutes. Going beyond dynamic content in email, does RSS content-driven emails increase engagement?
They can. One of the things that we have done, and we'll talk about this at the session with NFIB, is we build their newsletters dynamically through consuming RSS feeds. Right. The reason is their newsletters are extremely dynamic, and so, for example, they send out Insight. We sent it out today for them. Insight goes out every 2 weeks, and it's basically a newsletter that goes to all 50 states, and there's a message from the president that's basically generalized to all 50 states. However, there is a section that's NFIB offers and news, and it's unique to every individual state. So because that was so dynamic that we basically went beyond our dynamic content feature and put in a customization where we're consuming RSS feeds and generating the newsletters automatically.
Great. I'm going to squeeze in one last question. Is there an SMS platform that integrates to NetForum?
We actually we do have an SMS platform. We have not integrated it to NetForum. It's something we could easily do. We just haven't had a client that has had that requirement. Our integrations start from a customer request or requirement, and so we just haven't done that at this point.
Okay. I can easily answer the last question. We did get a question about when and where our conference is. The Avectra User and Developer Conference, we typically refer to that as AUDC, is happening at the end of February 26th through the 28th down in Orlando. And if you want more information about the conference, you can visit our website at www.audc2012.com. I think there's also a link on the Avectra homepage that should take you there too. Okay, well great. I think that concludes today's program.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This does conclude today's conference call. You may disconnect your phone lines at this time and have a wonderful day. Thank you for your participation.